In the early summer of 2007, I was sailing my 42-foot ketch Sarah back to the USA from Portugal. Bob Colt had joined me in Lagos, Portugal, and we had sailed to the Portuguese island of Madeira. And now in mid-May, we were preparing to sail Sarah across the Atlantic to Bermuda. The planned course was to sail southwest from Madeira until we picked up the trade winds that would push us to the west into the vicinity of 60 degrees west longitude, and from there we would head northwest to Bermuda. Sarah was now berthed at the marina in Calheta on the island of Madeira. We had spent 5 days relaxing on the island and preparing for the longest passage either of us had ever attempted, 2,500 nautical miles to Bermuda. We had been waiting for the trade winds to fill in over Madeira to give us a good start on the passage. By the 15th of May, high pressure had settled in north of Madeira, and the trades were blowing strong. The high mountain ridges of Madeira provided protection from the trades. When we departed Calheta, we sailed down the island in a gentle breeze. From this vantage, we could see a small portion of the Madeira highway system. In this bridge, between the tunnels through the ridges, there are numerous bridges and tunnels up and down the island. Finally, we were approaching the Ponta do Pardo, which would take us out of the lee of the island and into the full strength of the trade winds. The instrument display above the navigation desk is showing the apparent wind speed of around 30 knots. Sarah was sailing at over 7 knots, so the true wind speed was between 35 and 40 knots. During the first few days, we saw many gusts that produced over 40 knots of apparent wind. Within the first few hours of this trip, I discovered that the fix I thought I had implemented on the monitor wind vane was not working. One of the control lines had nearly chafed in two on the sail to Madeira, and now the chafe was back. The wind vane was essential to the voyage, and I considered turning around to Calheta to sort out the problem. Turning around would have been a major problem, as it would have likely taken more than 24 hours to get back in the lee of Madeira. Bob was having none of turning around, so I was easily convinced to make the repair underway. That involved hanging off the stern in these conditions, but I was able to get the wind vane back in working order.
I think I have some from last week in there somewhere.
You know, I did put that stew down the bottom of the refrigerator because it's defrosted.
Good.
I think it was okay that way.
Yeah, I think it would have kept out because it's sealed and it's cooked. But
Yeah. Looks pretty nasty in the bottom of this thing.
yeah. That's why we have safety harnesses.
The best part of having these strong winds straight out of Madeira is that we didn't have to head southwest initially to pick them up. So we were able to sail due west straight for Bermuda for the first 3 days. By the 19th of May, the winds had abated a bit. It was still blowing between 20 and 25 knots, but we no longer had to contend with gusts over 40 knots. We were still making good time, but now the motion was more comfortable and we could get out of foul weather gear. The gentler conditions allowed us to straighten up the cabin a bit and stop using lead cloths on the berths. By the 25th of May, the winds had slackened significantly. We had turned more southerly to try to stay in the fresher winds. The PC at the navigation station was used primarily for navigation and communications.
Navigation brakes, don't we?
However, now that the sailing was not so exciting as in the first few days, the computer games came active. I admit to playing a lot of pinball on this computer. This is one of the few freighters we saw on this passage. In the days before GPS, I would have never let a freighter pass without contacting them. A freighter position fix was better than any position determined by a celestial sight reduction. We did have contact with one other sailboat, a Spanish yacht returning to Galicia after a year or so in the Caribbean. By the 28th of May, the high-pressure ridge had moved even further south, forcing us on a more southerly course to try to stay in what remained of the trade winds. Cooking was also a lot easier in these gentler conditions. Bob, like myself, enjoys cooking, so we shared that duty, with the non-cook each day having the dishwashing responsibility.
It may end up being mush, yeah.
By the 31st of May, we had reached 55 degrees west longitude. And trade winds or not, it was time to turn northwest towards Bermuda. We were able to communicate with family and friends via email using the PC and the single sideband radio. Now the winds were so light, we occasionally had to furl the sails and continue under engine power. On our next to last day at sea, Bob's persistence with a fishing rig finally paid off. He hooked 2 scabbard fish, or espadas as they are known in Portuguese. They aren't much to look at, sort of a barracuda head on an eel's body. They are delicious and a specialty on the island of Madeira. Unfortunately, there appears to be an art to cleaning these fish. An art that escaped both of us. After a couple of failed attempts to skin and fillet these fish, they were returned to the sea uneaten. By the morning of June 4th, we were approaching Bermuda.
That's us talking about.
I have not spoken to the vessel yet, but I am going to call them and tell them the situation that you are in and see what happens as a result of discussing that with them. So you can stand by on 16, continue to make your approach to the seaway. The wind is still
As we neared the entrance to St. George's Harbor, Bermuda Harbor Radio contacted us to see if we could assist another yacht. This is a Dutch yacht that had lost steering and was proceeding with an emergency tiller. They requested we stand by in case they had problems entering the harbor in these rolling conditions, a task we gladly performed. After clearing Bermuda Customs and Immigration, we anchored Sarah in Powder Hole on the south side of the harbor. We waited until the warm front had passed the area, then launched the dinghy and headed ashore. A few days later, we moved Sarah to Captain Smoke's Marina to prepare for our departure for the Chesapeake Bay. Here is Sarah's track to Bermuda, extracted from our ship's log.